the next thing we're going to do is jump into the Windows box and configure the DHCP scopes for these networks so that clients in them can get IP addresses. Then we'll have to configure some ISE policies and verify that things come up, get put in the right VLAN, and are getting IP addresses and are pingable on the network. So on our DHCP server here, we will configure those scopes so that our clients can get addresses. I will start with the APs. And we'll have to come back and modify this scope later to add the DHCP options for the access points to join the controller when it comes time to do the wireless. And we'll do our data. Voice. Nope. 12. Wireless. All right, so I think that should be all of them. We will hand back our DNS and our default gateway, obviously, out of these scopes you saw configured there as well. So now, if clients were to get put into one of these VLANs correctly, they'll get an IP address and should gain connectivity to the network. But in order for that to happen, we have to have some ISE policies that allow it to happen. So in this scenario, we'll go into ISE and we'll create those policies. We'll start with some wired MAB policies for the access points and the phones that are on the network. If I pull this up here, the Cisco phone, this Polycom phone, and these two APs to be able to get them into their relevant VLANs. So here, our policy sets, we'll create a new one called wired MAB, and I think I mentioned in the last video as well that we can't, there's a million different ways to configure ISE at this level from your policy sets, so on and so forth. But we'll just do it this way. So in here, we can see we've just got a default policy. At this point, anything coming in MAB, wired MAB, is just going to get denied from getting onto the network altogether. So here, create a new, we will call this phones. And in here, we will see if this works. We'll just use endpoints, and endpoint logical profile is IP phones. Now, that's broad, right? Normally you would have a little more specific stuff in here, but our result, we are going to create a new one called phones. And in here, we are going to do a VLAN, and name is going to be voice. And we have to check the voice domain permission. And keep in mind here, right, I could put in a VLAN, what is our voice VLAN, 11. I could put 11 in here. What's nice about doing named VLANs is if my voice VLAN at multiple sites is different, right, maybe it's 11 at one, maybe it's 22 at another, I can return the name as opposed to the number, and the switch is going to put it in the right VLAN based on the name, regardless of what the number is. So we'll set that here. And then we will also do one for our access points. So here we will create a new, call it APs. And for this one, we will also use endpoints, but this time endpoint policy. And I think, yeah, Cisco access point. So any Cisco access point. Here, we will say APs. And for VLAN, it was APs. Okay, now those are built. And there's a possibility that we may be seeing devices try to connect. And we are. So we can see 3800 AP, 9971, Polycom device, and Aranet 40. How long ago was that? That was quite a while ago at this point. So we may need to go bounce those devices. But as you can tell, they are being seen by Catalyst Center, or excuse me, by ISE, and they are being profiled. So I know our APs will work. We'll see if the device for the phones actually profiles right with the policy that we built. I may be able to go to our endpoints here and find those. Here are my APs. And here's one of my phones. Where's the Polycom device? Here's the other one. And here, I think I have to do them one by one. Yeah, we can do a COA port bounce. That'll essentially do a shut, no shut on the port and reboot them. Where's my last one? That was 3. It is. That should force all of those to reboot. We'll give that a little time, but here we see them coming in again now at a current time. Give that a little time. Okay, much later here, you can see by the time, but these guys are authing. The piece I missed when I quickly built this policy set for Wired MAB is the authentication piece. With Wired MAB, we need to change this if auth failed to continue and if user not found to continue. That allows them through the authentication phase. They were failing, right away. Now we can see in our live logs that pretty much everybody is working here. Our access points got the APs result, both the 3800 and the 4800 here. Our Cisco phone got put in the phones. However, this Polycom device is still not matching that rule we built. So in here, this pre-built IP phones does not incorporate a Polycom device as a phone, maybe because obviously it's pretty general. So what we can do is we can look at our endpoints and take a look at that Polycom device and see if there's anything we can do. OUI is Polycom. I'm really looking to see if there's anything in here that would give us any detail around a make or a model for it. And we're really not seeing it here, I don't think. We should be getting something from CDP or LLDP. Here we go. Yes, VVX 500. So we do get this CDP cache platform information. So we do know that it is a VVX 500, but ISE does not have a policy for that. So with that, let's just go look. This is a little ISE work, somewhat outside of SDA, but let's take a look at what that IP phones policy logical profile actually contains. So here we can see this is pre-built in ISE. It contains Astra, Avaya, Cisco, IP phone general, whatever that is, and Nortel. But of the available policies that are these profiling policies, we don't have anything for Polycom other than the Polycom device. If I can find the P, yeah, here. So what we can do is we can build one, right? We can build one for this make and model phone based on that CDP data and nest it under this Polycom device or create it in here and add it to this group so that it'll get profiled right. So under profiling policies here, if we add one, okay, so I think it's just complaining about this having spaces in it. Let's try this again. That did let us save it. I didn't make it a member of the Polycom devices, but let's see what that's all about here. This is going to be a problem here because minimum certainty factor, it is going to match this Polycom OUI check, and that's going to be 100. So I am going to have to go up mine to above 100. So we will make this 110 and this 110. This is just kind of hacking my way through it. There. Now, if we go find our live log and we force this guy to do a reauth, we should see it come back correctly now. Notice here we already found the endpoint profile. Good, so we know it's right. Now we just need to go edit this to include that. And that, once it reauths, there we go. All right, so now it got put in the phones VLAN. So if we go back over to our switches, whoops, that's the border control plane for that. Has the 3800 and then I believe, yep, the Cisco IP phone. So if I do show VLAN 22 and 24, we can see that 22 has been put in VLAN 4 and 24 has been put in VLAN 11, so our policy worked. And then if we look at the detail on this, we can see he got an address and he got an address. So we're getting IP addresses theoretically from my computer here. I should be able to ping those. Yep. Okay, so we have IP connectivity. We've let those clients on the network. Now the last thing is to configure the policies to let these Windows devices on. So these are going to be domain joined to our Active Directory domain controller. They are going to authenticate with TEAP, Tunnel Leap, for their authentication. So they need both a computer cert and a user cert, and obviously to be domain joined here. So to get started on that, first we've got some Active Directory work to get done. Creating some users and editing some policy here. So right away, we're going to do new users. And this is going to come into play later on when we do some testing with security group tags as well. So here we're going to say contractor user and we are also going to create a employee user. Then we are also going to create a couple of groups for contractor and employee. And for the contractor group, we will add this contractor user to the group. And for the employee group, we will add the employee user. So those are created. They'll have logins. Next, in group policy, we want to edit our default domain policy. Again, this is just doing it for lab. And we need to make sure that we are pushing our certificates for both the computer and the user to the machines and users as they get added to the domain and log into machines. So under our policies on the computer side, under Windows settings and security settings, let's make this a little bigger. We should see our PKI, Windows PKI, where are you? Public key policies here. And we need to turn on auto enrollment, renew expired, update certificates, and then underneath the user, pretty much the same thing. Expired, update. And I will say up front, I have had some issues with my lab in this working properly. I'm not sure if it's just the number of times I've reverted to a snapshot or whatever, but the certification authority is here, it's running, it's good. However, for whatever reason, normally that's all you have to do and the certs push automatically. But in the last couple of lab work I've done, it's not worked and I've had to do it manually, and it works just fine manually. So that should do it over here on the domain controller for now. And we will move on to the ISE policies now. So if we go back over to our ISE, I was just looking through this to find what TrustSec policy we would use here, and I chose contractors and employees wherever it is here. But first thing we need to do is go to our administration and external identity sources, and we need to add our groups. So that we can use them in policy. There's employee. And there's a contractor. That will give us the ability to use those in our policy. So here, if we go to our policy sets, we need to create another new policy set. We'll call this wired.1x. And it will be wired.1x. And then in here, we will call this employee comp only. And chaining result is going to be comp only, so user failed and machine succeeded. In addition to that, notice this is going to be an and. We are going to go to our identity group. Oh, get rid of my search here. And we will choose our external groups. And you'll notice here we have our two groups. Now, these were for the users, and I'm authing computer here. So I think I need to go back. I'm going to just make it easy on myself. I'm going to choose contractor here temporarily to use this. Our result is going to be data. All right, we want to put that in the data network, which VLAN data save. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in detail here as to what I'm doing and why. But we're going to make a change to that. We're going to go back to our external identity sources, and we're going to add another group from Active Directory because I don't want to have to worry about adding the machines to a group. So I'm just going to use this domain computers. Every machine that gets added is automatically going to get put into this domain computers group. So we'll add that guy, come back over to our policy. And I will edit this and change it to, oh, I'm too fast. It'll show up here in just a second. There we go. I've noticed that if you go too fast, it doesn't make it there. So domain computers. Now I'm going to duplicate this. Actually, I don't need to duplicate this because this is going to be, we'll just call it comp only. Maybe we should call it machine because it makes more sense. So if we get a EAP tunneled auth with the user failed, but the machine succeeded, the machine cert, it should hit this policy, verify that that machine is part of domain computers, and result with the data. If we now duplicate this above, we can call this user only. And in here, I'm just going to make this easy. This is going to be user succeeded, but machine failed. And now here, we need to make this a little different. We need to get rid of that guy, add an OR, put a new one in here for our identity of the contractor and the employee. Nope, that did not work right. There we go. So this is basically saying if the machine or if the user authed correctly with their cert, but the machine failed and the user is part of contractor or employee, go ahead and result with data. Then up above here, we will say employee. You know what? Let's make them all one. User, machine. So I should have duplicated that. It would have saved me some headache. Let's delete that. User, machine. User and machine both succeeded. And then here, we're going to look at contractor and employee. Now, this looks kind of weird because we're giving the same result for all of these responses. And the idea behind EAP chaining and TEAP in general is that I can say, hey, if a machine boots up and it's sitting at the login screen, right, I don't yet have an identity. So right now, the only thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get a machine only auth. And in a lot of organizations, maybe in that scenario, I only want this machine from a security perspective to be able to get to maybe the internet for Windows updates or some internal patching servers and general DNS and Active Directory stuff. But I don't want them at that point to have any other access to the network. So I can limit, based on their authentication type here, what level of access they get to the network. So this may be a, result with the same VLAN, but it may have a DACL or downloadable ACL on it that prevents this machine from getting to, much on the network and locks it down. That type of thing. User only, very similar. You could lock that now. How a machine would, succeed a user auth but not a computer auth, unless maybe somehow it didn't get the computer cert or something to that effect. I don't know, but nonetheless, that's our option, right? The user succeeded, but the machine failed. And then, of course, user machine, they both succeed. At that point, we're as secure as we can get. We let them on the network without any question. So in lab here, it looks kind of weird because I am doing the same results for all three, but we will see um, as we go through the lab and get those machines domain joined and they get their certs, and we put them plug them into the switch ports, that when they boot up and they're sitting at the login screen, they're going to hit this machine only policy and they're going to sit there. And yes, they'll have full access to the network, but we'll see it in ISE. Once the user logs into the machine, at that point a reauth occurs and we should see this user machine uh, get hit, and then they get on the network. Now, we will have to break this out, right? When we get into um, the TrustSec and security group tag stuff, I want to tag contractor and employee differently, right? I want one of them to have the contractor's tag and the other one to have the employee tag. So I'm going to end up, you know, creating two rules out of this and just leaving one as contractor, one as employee, so that I can assign the right security group for each. So now we need to go on to the machines themselves here and get them configured. I have temporarily unplug them from the fabric switches, right? Because right now I would have to go do some sort of MAB policy to allow them onto the network, because all of these switch ports are authenticated. You cannot get on the network without authenticating to ISE. We're in closed mode. So in that scenario, they're actually connected up outside of this core, well, essentially into this core that routes back into the lab. So they have full internet access right now and full access to our domain controller and that sort of thing. So we need to get them joined to the domain and then verify that they get their certificates and configure their network interfaces, wired network interfaces to auth correctly using those certs. So if we head back over to our deal here, these guys doing some Windows Update stuff in the background right now, but they are just two blank, brand new Windows 11 machines. I'm going to pause the video till this all gets done and then we'll get into it. Okay, those completed. So now the first thing we need to do here, because the network that they're on does not hand back the DNS server for the lab here. You'll notice it's handing back different DNS servers. We do need to edit this. Whoops, I need to edit this. We're going to set the DNS to manual, and this is going to be 10.199.0.13 for our domain controller in the lab. I'm going to go ahead and do that same thing over here for this other machine. I'm not a fan of the way Windows has changed to do this networking stuff. I like the old better. So now they're looking up to the proper DNS server. We should be able to domain join them. And again, not a fan of the way Windows 11 handles this process either, because I don't think I came to the right spot here. Yeah, so yeah, you have to add worker school. And down here, we're going to click on join to a local Active Directory domain, lab.local. While that's going, we'll go over here and we will do the same thing. Whoops, clicked on the wrong one. Let's try that again. Lab.local. Check back on our other one. Can't join this domain. Why? All right, I'll pause here and figure out what's going on with that. Okay, so I was able to fix this, and actually what I did might be worth showing here. So I moved these back. They are now plugged into the fabric switches. I have no idea why this helped, why it worked. I looked up that error 58 I was getting, and I'm honestly not sure what was causing that. But I moved them back to the fabric, and then I, manually configured the ports in the fabric so that they didn't require authentication anymore. And then I thought to myself, well, that'd be something good to show in here as well. So if we go back to Catalyst Center, um, and I go to Provision Fabric Sites, and I look at Fabric 1, there is this port assignment. Now keep in mind, our authentication template is set to closed mode, which means by default, Catalyst Center will configure all of the ports on the switch for authentication. You don't authenticate correctly, you don't get on the network. However, this port assignment piece, you can go through and you can, reconfigure all of these ports in various ways. So what I done, I found out that those were both plugged into 1036 on Fabric 1 and Fabric 2, and I came in here and I overrode the closed authentication with open and set a data VLAN. No different than going into the port and doing a switch port access VLAN 10 for data, and turning off the authentication essentially. So I did that for both ports. And then I moved obviously moved the devices back to those ports. Now, I already did one of these, but we'll go ahead and do this one. I also set the DHCP or the DNS back to DHCP um, on these guys. And now if I do a connect, local Active Directory, this just comes right up and works. So I am not honestly sure what was causing that, but we'll give that guy a restart and they should be domain joined. I'm going to pause here while this restarts. Okay, so we're back up to the login screen. It's wanting us to log in as administrator by default, which this is our domain. I don't want to do that. I'm going to use eUser here because that's our domain user. And over here on this other one, I am going to use the C user for the contractor and let those log in. It'll take a minute to set it up. I'll pause here. And now we can see here we're logged into this machine. The first thing I want to check is, did I get my certificates right? We told the domain controller via group policy to push those certificates. And if I say manage computer certificates, we can see it actually works. So we did get our certificate here. Let's look at the other one. That one got it as well. Now we need to check the user cert as well to see if we received that. We did not. So I'm going to pause here and do some work to see if I can actually make that work dynamically. Otherwise, we'll pull them manually here. Okay, so after some investigation here, something I noticed, this computer cert that we did receive shows a date of 11/19, and it's actually 12/21. So I sys-prepped both of these boxes. It factory defaulted them before I started this process. This would have been on there from before. So I don't know how this made it through the sysprep and actually stayed, but as I look at the certificate services, the certificate authority, I came in here, and what led me to that is I looked for all the certs that had been generated, and you'll notice I don't see either of those two computer certs even. So that group policy process is obviously not working. I'm going to go ahead and delete this certificate from the computer here, and then I'm going to just manually request those certificates. So I should be able to delete this. Oh, I may not be a admin on this box. Let's try the personal one first. So Alt-Task, request new cert. It sees the Active Directory policy that is out there. We want a user. And who knows, this domain controller in this lab has been defaulted and messed with. So here we got the employee user cert. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here if I try to do that same thing. Yeah, I don't have access. So we need to run MMC as an administrator. These users are not admins on the box. So I'd remove snap-in, certificates, computer account. Then I should be able to delete this guy. And request a new certificate. And now we've got a new one here. Let's go do the same process for this other one. And we'll just do run as administrator. We'll delete this one. Request a new one. That is there. And maybe it has something to do with all of that as to why this isn't working as well. Like I said, that domain controller has been used and abused in the lab here. All right. So we've got the contractor user here and the employee user cert over there. Now, as an example, if I pull my certificate services back down and I refresh, we can see that those certificates were generated here. So they're set. Now, the next piece is configuring the network connection for our authentication method for TEEP. One thing that I can show you in Active Directory here in Group Policy Management is that even this being Server 2025, the group policy for TEEP somewhat exists. I'll just call this TEEP. And we'll edit that. But if I want to go configure that here, and I might have done this in the last video, I don't necessarily remember right now, but wired network policies, if I create a new one, call it TEEP, go over to my security, we do see TEEP here. But when we come down to choose our client authentication, there's nothing here. So it's not working yet. We'll see the same screen when we configure it manually. So what has to be done essentially is you have to actually create it on a machine, export it, and then import that export into a group policy so that these fields populate. Otherwise, they're just not there. So I'm not even going to bother with that group policy. We'll just configure them manually here. Like I said, I may have done that in the last video series on this. So in here, we're going to go into the old network and sharing center and change adapter settings. And what we'll notice here, under authentication, interesting that this was set. Like I said, I sysprep these. This should not have been set to TEEP. It'll be interesting to see. User or computer auth, that's good. In here, yeah, the fact that this is still checked and these are still set means that something didn't reset on this network adapter. Nonetheless, it's all set correctly, so I want my lab.dc. And essentially what this is saying, right, is if when we try to authenticate, we should trust a cert from this root cert authority, which is this cert. We then, when we try to authenticate to it, we are going to use TLS ×2, user and computer. And again, we're trusting the lab cert. And under advanced here, we are choosing certs to authenticate with from that lab certificate authority. So this is nothing more than a selection criteria. If I were to have multiple certificates to pick the right one, I'm pretty sure I went over all of this in the other video series in more detail. But this looks to be configured correctly for the proper authentication. And now that we have our certs, this should work. I am somewhat concerned about the root cert that might be on these because I'm guessing it didn't get recreated as well. It was already there. But let's go over here and check this one. Oops, no, not computer. Control panel. And then we're going to look at the network adapter. Yeah, everything is still safe, so I don't know where that came from or how it made it through a sysprep, but it did. So knowing that these guys should be able to successfully authenticate now, we should be able to go back to Catalyst Center, and we should be able to default these ports back to closed. So here, if I clear port assignment, clear, and deploy that, that is going to turn authentication back on the port. We can see here what it's doing for the port. And while that's running, we to our Fabric 1 and do the same thing for that port. Port assignment here, 36. Clear port assignments. Looks like that other one's finished successfully. And we will deploy that. And pause here and deploy that. And I will pause again until I see that it succeeded. Okay, looks like that succeeded. Now, if we come back over to our machines, they're saying that we need to take action to sign in. Normally, when that's shown up, we have an issue with the certificate. Oh, you know what I just realized? We have not done any certificate work on ISE. So that could be part of the problem here too. What's weird is that that is different. Might still be a factor of that, but we have not told ISE to trust the root cert from the domain controller yet. Nor have we generated certs for ISE. So I am way ahead of myself here. Let's get that done. So the first thing we need to do, I jumped into the web interface of the certificate server on the domain controller here. We need to download the CA cert new, and over here in ISE, under administration certificates, trusted certificates, we need to import. We're just gonna trust it for all. Now here it is, trusted. Then we need to generate a system certificate for EAP, which right now, chances are that thumbprint that we were getting is this certificate from ISE, as opposed to the certificate from Active Directory. So I completely missed this step. So we need to do a signing request. I'm going to leave it multi-use. We'll call it IT lab. And I'm not going to worry about any of the rest of that. We are going to generate this. Whoops. Oh yeah, I suppose I better tell it which node to generate it for. We are going to export that. Then we are going to open that in a notepad. We're going to copy all of this. We'll go back here, go home, going to request a certificate, advanced cert request. I will make this web server, I think typically works. Submit. We will download the certificate. And in the background, I'm going to rename it to icenode.cir. And then over here, we'll click on certificate signing request. We will bind the certificate. Wow, I missed a lot in here. I was getting way ahead of myself. And then we are going to use this for EAP authentication. Yes, we know. Yes, we know. So now over here, we can see that our EAP auth is using our certificate from certificate services that we just created with that root. Now, we also need to go, yeah, I missed a lot in here, to our external identity sources, our certificate profiles. We're going to add a new one for AD, we'll call it. Identity store here is going to be our lab.local, and I'm going to check this one for Active Directory. Then over in our policy, in our authentication policy, which I didn't even create one. I'm just going to call this AD. And this we will just say wired 802.1x because we can be broad here. And we will use this AD cert profile. Okay. Now, if we come back over here, let's just give these guys a reboot. See what happens. I'm going to pause. Okay, so this first one came up. We see our little network icon here shows connected. So that's a good sign. If I go over here to our Radius live log, I can see what we did here, right? We hit the machine only, got the data result, which is what we would expect at this point because nobody's logged in. I should see the other one as well. 01 and 02. Yep, so they both got connected. Now if I log in, we're still connected, but over in ISE we should see a reauth, and now we see user machine. So both are user and machine certificates passed. That was completely my fault, missing all of the certificate work on ISE to make that happen. So we now have our wired networking up. So here, as an example to kind of show what I was showing earlier, right? If I come in here and I ping, let's see who this guy is. Fig, he is the 204 and 204 4.10. That would be the access point right at this site. So I can ping it, but if I trace route to it, I should have done a -D, whatever it is, to make it not look up domain names. We hit our gateway, which is the Anycast gateway. 204.19, that is one of our loops. 204.12, or not a loop, I'm sorry, the ISIS neighbors. And essentially what this is telling us is that this took the link from this machine out up to the Fusion, came back down in the global routing table to hit the access point, right? It didn't just route up and across because they're in different VRFs, but the connectivity is still there. Likewise would be over here on the O2 side. Actually, I think this is O2. I've got these swapped around. I may need to fix that. So I went and swapped the cables in the background. So now we're 10.204 on lab 01, or the lab win 1101, and 10.212 on lab win 11.2 because I had those backwards. So that would have probably confused me later on down the line, I'm sure, as we go through this. So we are all set with the wired networking across all of our devices. The access point is online, the phone is online, and our Windows boxes are authenticating. Everything is looking good.